The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of three suns. Captain James Walker stood straight and proud in his blue dress uniform, trying to hide how impressed he was by the alien architecture. This was humanity's big moment, their first official presentation to the Galactic Council. He couldn't mess this up. Around him, the Council chamber held representatives from over 200 alien species. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others stood on specialized platforms, and a few existed as pure energy forms contained in special fields. The diversity was stunning, but Walker kept his face neutral. He had trained for months for this moment. High Commander Rex of the Arcturus species sat at the head of the council. His silver-scaled skin reflected the chamber's lights, and his four eyes blinked in different patterns as he reviewed the human admission documents. Unlike many other species present, he had a roughly humanoid shape, though he stood nearly 9 feet tall. Captain Walker, Rex's translator, conveyed his deep, rumbling voice. "We have reviewed Earth's application for membership in the Galactic Council. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, showing acceptable technological advancement. However," he paused, all four eyes focusing on the weapon holstered at Walker's hip, "we find some aspects of your military technology concerning." Walker touched his ceremonial pistol, a symbol of human military tradition. "Sir, I assure you our weapons comply with all Council guidelines regarding—" "You still use projectile weapons," Rex interrupted, his tone carrying clear disgust. "Actual physical bullets. Pieces of metal propelled by chemical explosions." A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. Walker felt his face grow hot, but maintained his composure. "With respect, High Commander, our projectile weapon technology is highly advanced. We've developed sophisticated railguns, coil guns, and—" "Primitive," declared a floating orb-like being to Walker's left. "We abandoned such crude weapons thousands of cycles ago. Energy weapons are clearly superior in every way." More laughter filled the chamber. Walker noticed several representatives shaking their heads, or equivalent appendages, in dismay. "Indeed," Rex continued, "every advanced species naturally progresses to energy-based weapons, plasma rifles, particle beams, focused radiation. These are the weapons of civilized beings. Your continued use of projectile weapons is quaint." Walker clenched his jaw. "Our military has energy weapons as well, but we maintain diverse capabilities." Yes, Rex waved a clawed hand dismissively. "You'll learn better soon enough. Now, regarding your admission." He lifted a glowing datapad. "The Council will accept Earth into the galactic community with conditions. You will begin phasing out your projectile weapons immediately. Our technical advisors will help upgrade your military to proper energy-based systems." Walker wanted to argue but knew it would only make things worse. "We appreciate the Council's guidance," he managed to say. "Excellent." Rex's scales rippled in what Walker assumed was satisfaction. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Captain. I'm sure humans will adapt quickly to proper military technology. You may keep your little projectile weapons in museums, of course." More chuckling echoed through the chamber. Walker gave a stiff bow and tried to ignore the condescending looks from the assembled aliens. As he turned to leave, he heard snippets of conversation. "Can you imagine? Actually throwing pieces of metal at your enemies. How did they even achieve spaceflight? Give them a few years, they'll forget all about their primitive guns." Walker's hands tightened into fists as he walked out of the chamber. Back on his ship, he found a message waiting from Earth Command. It was from Colonel Thomas Grant, his old mentor. "How did it go?" Walker sat heavily in his chair and began typing. "They laughed at our guns, sir, treating us like children playing with toys. They want us to switch entirely to energy weapons." The response came quickly. "Let them laugh. Keep our projectile research going quietly. Something tells me they might not be as superior as they think." Walker smiled slightly. The aliens could laugh all they wanted. Humanity had learned long ago never to put all their eggs in one basket. or all their trust in one type of weapon. He had a feeling that lesson might prove important someday. Looking out at the glittering spires of the council capital, Walker wondered how long their laughter would last. 3 months after Earth joined the Galactic Council, Colonel Thomas Grant stood in an underground bunker, watching soldiers train with traditional firearms. The facility was hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, far from the prying eyes of alien observers. "Sir," a young lieutenant approached with a tablet. "The Council's weapons inspectors are scheduled to visit next week. They want to check our progress on converting to energy weapons." Grant's weathered face hardened. "Show them the surface facilities. Let them see the plasma rifles they gave us. But this," he gestured to the firing range, "this stays our secret." The sounds of gunfire echoed through the range as soldiers practiced with everything from pistols to advanced railguns. Unlike the sleek, clean energy weapons of the Council races, these weapons were rugged, practical, and proven. "Colonel," the lieutenant looked nervous, "isn't this against Council regulations?" "Sometimes you need a backup plan," Grant replied. "I don't trust those aliens. They're too confident, too sure they know everything." Above ground, things were changing fast. Alien technology flooded Earth's markets. People drove flying cars, used instant translators, and played with holographic games. But military changes worried Grant the most. The Council provided Earth's armies with energy weapons, beautiful, elegant guns that fired beams of superheated plasma. They worked perfectly in demonstrations, clean, efficient, and powerful. But Grant had been a soldier too long to trust anything that seemed perfect. Later that day, Grant received a secure call from Captain Walker, now Earth's representative on the Council. "It's getting worse, sir." Walker's hologram appeared on Grant's desk. "They're pushing for faster weapon conversion. High Commander Rex wants all Earth military forces using energy weapons within 6 months. Grant leaned back in his chair. "That's impossible. We can't retrain everyone that fast." "They don't care. They think we're being stubborn, clinging to obsolete technology." Walker looked tired. "The other Council races are treating us like children. Yesterday, they patted me on the head, literally patted me on the head, and said we'd grow out of our primitive phase." "Keep playing along," Grant advised. "Let them think we're following their rules. Meanwhile, I'm establishing more hidden training facilities. Some of our best scientists are still developing projectile weapon technology, off the books." Walker nodded. "Be careful. Council surveillance is everywhere." He stopped suddenly, looking over his shoulder. "Someone's coming. I'll contact you later." The hologram disappeared, leaving Grant alone with his thoughts. He walked to a weapon rack and picked up an old M4 rifle. It was nothing fancy, just steel, polymer, and precision engineering. But it worked. It had served humanity well for centuries. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." A scientist walked in, carrying a large case. "Colonel, we've finished the new prototype." Grant carefully placed the M4 back and opened the case. Inside lay a sleek rifle that combined old and new technology. It looked simple, but Grant knew it contained advanced materials and engineering that even the Council races would envy, if they hadn't dismissed projectile weapons as worthless. "Range test?" Grant asked. "Perfect accuracy at 3 kilometers," the scientist replied proudly. "And unlike energy weapons, no radiation signature. They'll never detect it." Grant lifted the weapon, feeling its perfect balance. "Keep working. Improve everything. Range, power, accuracy. But keep it quiet." He paused, remembering the condescending looks from alien diplomats. "They think we're primitives playing with toys. Let them think that." As he walked back to his office, Grant passed a historical quote painted on the wall. "Pride comes before the fall." "Your pride will cost you dearly," he muttered, thinking of the Council's arrogance. "I just hope we're ready when it does." In space, unknown to both humans and the Council, something stirred in the dark between stars. something that would make everyone rethink their assumptions about primitive weapons. The emergency alarms in the Galactic Council chamber screamed as representatives rushed to their seats. High Commander Rex's scales had turned pale gray with stress as he activated the central hologram display. 3 colonies gone, he announced, his voice shaking. Completely destroyed in the last 2 days. The chamber erupted in panic. Captain Walker sat quietly, watching the chaos unfold. The massive hologram showed a spreading darkness at the edge of Council space, worlds going dark one by one. "Show us the enemy," someone shouted. Rex pressed a button, and the image changed. The chamber fell silent. Walker leaned forward, studying the creatures on display. They looked like giant crystalline insects, their bodies covered in transparent, silicon-based shells that sparkled like diamond armor. Each one was the size of a small tank. "The swarm," Rex said quietly, "an ancient species we thought was just a legend. They hibernate for thousands of years, then wake to feed. And now they're awake." "Our weapons?" asked a floating representative. Rex played a video. Council military ships fired bright energy beams at the crystal creatures. The beams simply passed through their transparent bodies or reflected off their shells, doing no damage. The video ended with the ships being torn apart. "Energy weapons are useless," Rex admitted. "Their crystalline structure makes them immune to plasma, lasers, and particle beams. We've lost every battle so far." Walker's communicator buzzed. A message from Colonel Grant, watching the emergency broadcast. "Think our primitive weapons might work against those crystal shells." Walker looked at the hologram again. The creature's shells might be energy resistant, but they still looked breakable, like glass or crystal. His mind raced with possibilities. "High Commander," Walker stood up. "Earth would like to help." Rex's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "This is beyond your capabilities, Captain. Your primitive technology would be even less effective than our advanced weapons." "Maybe not," Walker argued. "Those shells, they're physical structures, right? Crystalline formations." "Correct, but..." "And like any crystal, they can break under physical impact." The chamber went quiet again. Rex stared at Walker. "What are you suggesting?" "Let us try our weapons, not energy weapons, our projectile weapons. Bullets, railguns, physical impacts." Laughter started, but it was nervous this time. Rex's scales flickered with annoyance. "This is not the time for jokes, Captain. We need real solutions, not obsolete technology." Suddenly, another alarm blared. A new hologram appeared, showing a massive swarm fleet approaching one of the Council's core worlds. "Colony T9 reports total failure of defenses," an aide announced. "Energy weapons having no effect. Estimated survival time 6 hours. Walker stood straighter. "Give us a chance. What do you have to lose?" Rex's scales shifted colors as he thought. Before he could answer, the chamber doors burst open. A military officer rushed in, his uniform torn and burned. "Outpost 7 has fallen," he gasped. "The swarm, they're unstoppable. Our weapons do nothing." Nothing. The chamber erupted in panic again. Representatives shouted suggestions, argued, or simply stared in horror at the spreading darkness on the map. Walker's communicator buzzed again. This time, it was a video file from Grant. It showed a test firing range where scientists had recreated the crystalline structure of the swarm's shells based on the emergency broadcast data. A standard rifle fired. The crystal shattered. "High Commander," Walker raised his voice above the chaos. "Earth requests permission to deploy our military forces against the swarm. We believe we can help." Rex looked at the spreading darkness on the map, then at the panicking representatives. Finally, he turned all 4 eyes to Walker. "Your primitive weapons against an enemy that our advanced technology can't scratch." He laughed bitterly. "The Council finds itself in an unusual position, Captain." He paused, watching another world go dark on the map. "We're desperate enough to try anything." Colonel Grant stood in the Council chamber, his old combat boots looking out of place on the polished floor. Behind him, a team of human soldiers carried large cases marked Earth Military, classified. High Commander Rex paced nervously, his scales shifting between gray and blue. You claim you've been developing weapons in secret, against Council regulations. We prefer to call it maintaining traditional capabilities, Grant replied calmly. He nodded to his soldiers, who opened the cases. Inside lay an array of weapons, everything from enhanced rifles to compact railguns. Captain Walker stood beside Grant, watching the Council members' reactions. Some looked offended, others curious, but none were laughing now. Not with 3 more colonies lost to the swarm in the past day. Explain, Rex demanded. Grant lifted one of the rifles. This looks simple, doesn't it? Like our old weapons you called primitive. But look closer. He pressed a button, and parts of the rifle became transparent, revealing its inner workings. Advanced materials developed in secret, targeting systems that don't rely on energy signatures, and most importantly, Grant pointed to the ammunition. Shells designed to fragment on impact, maximizing damage to crystalline structures. A hologram appeared, showing test footage. The enhanced bullets struck crystalline plates similar to the swarm's shells, shattering them completely. The Council chamber went silent. Impossible, one representative whispered. You couldn't have developed this without us knowing. Walker stepped forward. You were so convinced of our primitive nature, you never looked closely. Your inspectors saw what they expected to see. Simple humans struggling to adapt to energy weapons. Meanwhile, we kept improving what we knew worked. Rex's scales turned dark with anger. You deceived the Council. We protected ourselves, Grant corrected. And now we might just save your worlds too. He turned to the hologram showing the swarm's advance. There's a small group of them approaching Colony T7. Let us prove what our weapons can do. The Council erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate action against Earth for breaking regulations. Others wanted to try the weapons immediately. A few simply stared at the human weapons with new understanding. Enough. Rex's voice boomed through the chamber. He walked to Grant, towering over him. If your weapons fail, Earth will face severe consequences for this deception. Grant didn't flinch. If our weapons fail, there won't be a Council left to punish us. Walker watched the exchange nervously. Everything depended on this moment. Earth's future in the galactic community, and maybe the survival of all Council species, hung in the balance. Rex's scales settled on a deep blue. Very well. You have permission to engage the swarm at Colony T7. Show us what your primitive weapons can do. Grant smiled for the first time. Captain Walker will coordinate from here. I'll lead the attack personally. He turned to his soldiers. Time to show them how Earth fights. As the human soldiers marched out, carrying their secret weapons, Walker caught snippets of conversation among the Council members. They'd fooled us completely. Perhaps we were too quick to judge. But will it actually work? The chamber's main screen showed Grant's ship departing for Colony T7. In less than an hour, they would either prove humanity's worth or fail spectacularly. Rex moved beside Walker. Your species took an enormous risk, developing weapons in secret. Walker watched Grant's ship disappear into faster-than-light travel. Sometimes the greatest risk is believing you're too advanced to learn from others. The emergency lights flashed again. The swarm had been detected near Colony T7. The test of humanity's primitive weapons was about to begin. The crystalline swarm creatures moved across Colony T7's main square, their transparent bodies gleaming in the twin sun's light. They had already destroyed the colony's energy weapon defenses, and now moved confidently toward the government buildings. Colonel Grant watched from his command post, his enhanced rifle ready. 200 Earth soldiers waited in hidden positions around the square, their weapons loaded with the special crystal-shattering rounds. All units ready, his radio crackled. Waiting for your order, sir. In the Galactic Council chamber, Captain Walker and the Council members watched through live feeds. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Your soldiers are outnumbered 5-1, Rex observed, his scales showing worry patterns. Walker smiled slightly. Watch. Grant's voice came clear through the command channel. Remember your training. Aim for the joint sections in their crystal armor. Fire on my mark. He took a deep breath, sighting down his rifle at the largest swarm creature. Operation Sledgehammer begins in 3, 2, 1. Fire. 200 human weapons opened fire simultaneously. The sound was deafening. Nothing like the quiet hum of energy weapons. The swarm creatures turned toward the noise, but too late. The special rounds struck their crystalline shells. The effect was devastating. Where energy weapons had harmlessly passed through or reflected off, the kinetic impact of bullets shattered their armor like glass. Pieces of crystal flew everywhere as the rounds found their marks. In the council chamber, the aliens watched in stunned silence. The swarm creatures, which had shrugged off their most powerful energy weapons, were literally falling to pieces under human gunfire. Second volley. Grant ordered, "Concentrate on the big ones." More gunfire erupted. The larger swarm creatures tried to charge the human positions, but precision railgun fire from hidden positions turned them into crystal shards. Smaller creatures attempted to retreat, only to be cut down by coordinated rifle fire. "Impossible," one council member whispered. "They're actually winning." Walker allowed himself a small grin. Kinetic energy. Sometimes the old solutions are the best ones. The battle lasted only 15 minutes. When it ended, the square was littered with broken crystal, all that remained of the supposedly invincible swarm. Not a single human soldier was lost. Grant walked to the center of the square, crunching over crystal shards. He keyed his radio. "Colony T7 is secure. All swarm units eliminated." He paused, then added, "I think we've proved our point." The council chamber erupted in excitement. Species that had laughed at human weapons just days ago were now demanding immediate shipments of rifles and railguns. Rex's scales had turned bright gold, a sign of amazement. "How many weapons can Earth produce?" Rex asked Walker. "How quickly can you teach our forces to use them?" "We've been preparing for something like this," Walker replied. "Weapon production can begin immediately. As for training," he smiled, "those primitive military drills you mocked, they're exactly what your troops need to learn." Grant's voice came through again. "Captain, you might want to show them the footage from our helmet cameras. Let them see exactly how effective these obsolete weapons are." Walker played the recordings. The council watched in awe as the battle replayed from ground level, crystal creatures shattering under precise gunfire, coordinated human tactics taking down larger threats, and the complete victory that followed. "Perhaps," Rex said slowly, "we were somewhat hasty in our judgment of human military technology." "We can discuss that later," Walker replied. "Right now, we have a galaxy to save." He pulled up a map showing swarm positions. "Colonel Grant's team just showed us these things can be killed. Now it's time to take the fight to them." Around the chamber, representatives nodded in agreement. The species that had laughed at human guns were now putting their hope in them. The tide of war was about to turn. Captain Walker stood on the bridge of the Council flagship, now modified to carry human weapons. Around him, alien crew members worked alongside human trainers, learning to use the newly installed railguns and missile systems. "Fleet is in position," the ship's alien commander reported. "All vessels report human weapons systems ready." Walker nodded, studying the tactical display. 5,000 ships surrounded the largest known swarm hive cluster. Each vessel now carried human-designed kinetic weapons alongside their traditional energy systems. "Remember your training," Walker spoke into the fleet-wide channel. "Fire in coordinated volleys. Don't let their numbers intimidate you. We have the weapons to break them." The swarm detected them first. Countless crystalline shapes emerged from the dark space around the hive, their bodies glittering like deadly diamonds in the starlight. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Walker ordered, "just like we practiced." The fleet split into layers, creating overlapping fields of fire. This was how Earth armies had fought for centuries: coordinated, disciplined, and lethal. First wave, fire. The sound didn't carry in space, but Walker could feel the vibration as the flagship's railguns launched their projectiles. Across the fleet, thousands of kinetic weapons fired simultaneously. Space itself seemed to light up with the trails of projectiles and missiles. The swarm's front ranks shattered. Where energy weapons had once passed harmlessly through their crystalline bodies, human-designed projectiles turned them into clouds of glittering fragments. Second wave, fire. More volleys launched. The swarm tried to adapt, forming defensive clusters, but the humans had planned for this. Special cluster missiles detonated among them, spreading clouds of smaller projectiles that shredded their formations. On a nearby council ship, Colonel Grant directed the ground assault teams. As the fleet engaged the swarm in space, dropships carrying soldiers with human weapons headed for the hive cluster itself. Team 1 has breached the outer shell, Grant reported. Those demolition charges worked perfectly. Moving to Phase 2. Walker watched the tactical display as human and alien soldiers fought side by side inside the hive. The aliens had learned quickly, adapting centuries of human combat experience to their own unique abilities. Energy weapons still had their uses, creating barriers, providing cover, powering shields. But the killing was done with good old-fashioned kinetic impact. "Sir," a sensor operator called out, "the hive is destabilizing. Internal structure is collapsing. All ground teams, pull back," Walker ordered. "Prepare for final barrage." The dropships retreated, carrying their victorious troops. Once they were clear, Walker gave his last order. "All ships, fire main guns. Target the hive's central core." 10,000 railgun rounds and missiles struck the hive simultaneously. The structure, already weakened by internal fighting, couldn't take the impact. It broke apart in a spectacular display of shattering crystal. The bridge crew cheered. Even the alien commander's skin glowed with victory colors. "Report from other sectors," the communications officer announced. 3 more hive clusters destroyed using the same tactics. The swarm is retreating across all fronts. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's primitive weapons had turned the tide of what had seemed an unwinnable war. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "We need every weapon they can produce. And send the combat footage to the Council. Let them see how well their troops are adapting to our obsolete fighting methods." As the fleet regrouped for their next assault, Walker received a message from High Commander Rex. "The Council requests your presence for an emergency session. We need to discuss revising our policies on military technology." Grant's voice came over the comm. "Should I tell them we have even better weapons in development?" Walker looked at the tactical display, where more swarm signatures were retreating into deep space. "Let's save some surprises for later. Something tells me the galaxy just learned an important lesson about primitive technology." The fleet moved into formation for their next attack. The great push would continue until every last swarm hive was shattered. Humanity had proven its worth not just through its weapons, but through its willingness to share centuries of combat knowledge with the galaxy. 6 months after the first battle against the swarm, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Display cases now lined the walls, showing human weapons alongside energy weapons. Training diagrams showed alien soldiers learning human combat stances. Even the guards carried both energy rifles and human-designed sidearms. Captain Walker and Colonel Grant stood at attention as High Commander Rex addressed the full council. 1 year ago, Rex began, his scales shimmering with formal patterns. "We laughed at human weapons. We called them primitive, obsolete, worthy only of museums." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Today, those same weapons have saved our civilization." The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had once mocked Earth's military now showed respect with their various gestures and signs. "The last swarm hive fell 3 days ago," Rex continued. "Their threat is ended. And so, the Council must acknowledge its error. He turned to face Walker and Grant directly. We were wrong. Humanity was right to maintain its traditional weapons, right to develop them in secret when we tried to force them to abandon their ways. Grant smiled slightly. We prefer to think of it as being prepared for anything. Indeed. Rex's scales flickered with amusement. The Council has voted unanimously on 3 measures. First, all restrictions on human weapon development are permanently lifted. More applause filled the chamber. Second, Earth will lead a new combined arms training program, teaching all Council species how to integrate physical and energy weapons effectively. Walker nodded. Earth's military academies were already preparing for an influx of alien students. And third, Rex's scales turned bright gold. Earth is granted a permanent seat on the Council's Military Advisory Board. Your perspective is too valuable to ignore again. The chamber filled with approving sounds from dozens of species. Walker saw representatives who had once laughed at his ceremonial pistol, now wearing similar weapons of their own. There's an old human saying, Grant addressed the Council. Pride comes before the fall. But there's another part to that lesson. Wisdom comes from admitting mistakes and learning from them. Rex nodded. We have learned much from humanity, not just about weapons, but about the danger of believing we had advanced beyond the need for, what did we call them? Primitive solutions. The best solution is the one that works, Walker replied. Whether it's ancient or advanced doesn't matter. The main display showed footage from the final battle. Human and alien ships fighting side by side. Energy weapons providing shields while kinetic weapons shattered swarm creatures. It was a perfect blend of old and new technology. Captain Walker, Rex announced, you stood in this chamber 1 year ago, enduring our mockery with dignity. Today, you stand here vindicated. What wisdom would you share with the Council? Walker looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs of the assembled representatives. Never stop learning, he said simply. The universe is too big, too complex for any species to have all the answers. Sometimes the most advanced civilization can learn from those they consider primitive. Sometimes the old ways and the new ways are stronger together. Well said, Rex agreed. His scales shifted to formal patterns again. Let the record show that on this day, the Galactic Council formally apologizes for its dismissal of human military technology and expertise. We acknowledge that Earth's dedication to maintaining its traditional weapons, while also embracing new technology, saved countless lives across the galaxy. The chamber filled with approving gestures from all species. As the formal ceremony concluded, Walker and Grant received message after message from various worlds requesting military training partnerships. They're not laughing anymore, Grant observed quietly. No, Walker agreed, touching the pistol at his hip, the same one they had mocked a year ago. But they are learning. And in the end, that's worth more than any victory. The Council chamber, once a place of mockery for human weapons, had become a symbol of cooperation between old and new, energy and kinetic, advanced and traditional. Humanity had not just proven its worth. It had helped forge a stronger, more adaptable galactic community. And somewhere in the weapon development labs back on Earth, new projects were already underway. After all, you never knew what threat might come next. But this time, Earth wouldn't face it alone.